You are in the middle of a moment that tests you. Someone disrespects you in front of others, and you feel your chest tighten as if your body is preparing for a fight. A plan you trusted collapses without warning, and your mind begins to race, trying to fix what cannot be fixed in that instant. You receive a message, a look, a silence that feels heavier than words, and suddenly your mood shifts without your permission. In that exact second, most people lose control, not because they are weak, not because they lack intelligence or discipline, but because they were never trained to stand firm when it matters. They were never taught that the real battle does not happen outside, in the event itself, but inside, in the interpretation that follows. And this is where everything begins to slip. Think about how fast it happens. One moment you are calm, the next you are irritated. One comment is enough to change your entire emotional state. One unexpected problem can take over your thoughts for hours, sometimes days. It feels automatic, like a chain reaction that you cannot interrupt. But what if that sense of inevitability is not real? What if, in that small space between what happens and how you respond, there is a level of control that most people never learn to access? Because the truth is, you have been conditioned to react long before you learned how to observe. You were taught to defend yourself, to prove yourself, to protect your image, but not to question your own impulses, not to step back and see clearly what is actually happening. So when life applies pressure, you move without awareness. You speak before thinking. You assume before understanding. You react before choosing. And every time this happens, you give something away. You give away your clarity. You give away your stability. You give away your ability to remain grounded when everything around you becomes unstable. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, Book 2, Paragraph 1, that you will meet people who are intrusive, ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful, and selfish. He did not write this as a complaint. He wrote it as a preparation, a reminder that the world will not adjust itself to your expectations. But here is the part that changes everything. He also understood that none of these people, none of these situations, have the power to disturb your mind unless you allow them to enter it in a certain way. This means the real threat is not what happens. It is how quickly you accept an interpretation without questioning it. Epictetus made this even clearer when he explained that it is not things themselves that disturb us, but the opinions we form about them. This is not just a philosophical idea. It is a direct observation of how your mind operates every single day. Something happens. Instantly, your mind assigns meaning. That meaning creates emotion. That emotion drives your reaction. And before you realize it, you are no longer acting with intention. You are being carried by a process you did not choose. Seneca warned about this in his writings when he said that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Most of the pain you experience does not come from the event itself, but from the story you build around it. The assumptions, the fears, the projections that feel real simply because they are intense. So you are not reacting to reality. You are reacting to a version of reality that your mind created in seconds. And this is where most people remain trapped. They try to control the outside. They try to change people, avoid discomfort, create perfect conditions where nothing goes wrong. But life does not work that way. It never has, and it never will. There will always be uncertainty. There will always be conflict. There will always be moments where things do not go as planned. So if your stability depends on external conditions, you will always feel unstable. But there is another way to exist in the middle of all this. A way where you no longer depend on the situation to feel in control. A way where your response is not dictated by your first impulse. A way where you can pause, observe, and choose how you stand, regardless of what is happening around you. This is not about becoming emotionless. It is not about suppressing what you feel or pretending that nothing affects you. It is about developing the ability to see clearly before you act, to recognize that the first reaction is not always the right one, to understand that strength is not found in immediate response, but in deliberate control. And once you begin to see this, something shifts in how you experience everything. You start to notice the moment before the reaction, the instant where you can either follow the old pattern or create a new one. You begin to realize that you are not as powerless as you once believed. And that realization changes how you move through the world. Because the strongest person is not the one who never faces chaos. It is the one who remains steady within it. The invisible discomfort.
There is something happening inside you right now that you rarely stop to examine. It feels natural, almost automatic, as if it is simply who you are. But it is not who you are. It is a pattern that has been running for so long that you stopped questioning it. You react. Not with awareness, not with intention, but with speed. A word reaches you, and before you understand it, you already feel it. A look crosses your path, and your mind fills in a story without asking for permission.
A small problem appears, and suddenly it grows in your thoughts until it feels larger than it actually is. This is the invisible discomfort. Not the event itself, but the way it takes control of you without resistance. You might believe you are responding to reality, but most of the time, you are responding to interpretation. And that interpretation is shaped by habits you did not consciously choose. Think about how often your emotional state changes depending on what happens around you. One conversation lifts you, another drains you. One piece of feedback gives you confidence, another makes you doubt everything. It creates a constant fluctuation, a sense that your stability depends on something outside of you. And that is exactly the trap. Because when your inner state depends on external events, you are no longer grounded. You are being moved, pulled by circumstances, pushed by opinions, shaped by things that were never meant to define you. Epictetus understood this deeply when he taught that people are disturbed not by events, but by the views they take of them. This means the instability you feel is not coming from what happens. It is coming from the meaning your mind assigns to what happens. And this process is so fast that it feels like truth. Someone ignores you, and your mind says it is disrespect. Something goes wrong, and your mind says you are failing. A plan does not work, and your mind says you are falling behind. None of these conclusions are facts. They are interpretations. But because they appear instantly, you accept them without questioning. This is where control is lost. You do not pause to observe what is real and what is assumed. You do not create distance between the event and your judgment. You move directly into reaction, and that reaction reinforces the pattern. Over time, this becomes your default way of living. You begin to believe that your emotions define your reality, that if something feels bad, it must be bad, that if you feel uncertain, something must be wrong. But feelings are not always accurate reflections of truth. They are signals, not commands. Seneca warned about this when he explained that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Most of the distress you experience is not caused by what actually happens, but by the anticipation, the projection, the internal narrative that grows around it. You are not just experiencing events. You are experiencing your interpretation of events. And if that interpretation is automatic, then your life becomes reactive. You are no longer choosing how to respond. You are following a script that was written by habit, by past experiences, by unconscious patterns that operate without your awareness. This is why you can feel strong in one moment and fragile in the next, not because your strength disappeared, but because your perception shifted. And when perception shifts without control, stability disappears with it. The invisible discomfort is not loud. It does not announce itself. It hides behind familiarity. It feels like normal behavior, like a natural reaction to what is happening. But it is not neutral. It is costing you something every time it takes over. It costs you clarity because you stop seeing situations as they are. It costs you control because you act before thinking. It costs you strength because you become dependent on conditions that you cannot control. And the most dangerous part is that you may never notice it. You may spend years trying to fix external problems, improve circumstances, avoid discomfort, without realizing that the instability you are trying to escape is being created internally. You change environments, but the pattern follows you. You change people, but the reaction remains the same. You solve one problem, and another appears, triggering the same cycle again, because the source was never outside. It was always in the speed of your reaction and the lack of space before it. But once you begin to see this, even slightly, something changes. You start to notice the moment before you react. The brief pause where a thought forms, where an emotion rises, where a judgment begins to take shape. And in that moment, you realize something that most people overlook. You are not your first reaction. There is a separation between what happens and how you respond. It may be small at first, almost unnoticeable, but it exists. And within that space, there is a different kind of power. The power to question what you are about to believe. The power to observe without immediately reacting. The power to choose instead of being carried by impulse. This is where stability begins, not by controlling the world, but by interrupting the automatic process that makes the world feel overwhelming. And once you recognize that this space exists, you cannot unsee it. You begin to understand that the discomfort you feel is not something you have to obey. It is something you can examine, something you can step back from. And in doing so, you start to reclaim control over something that once felt uncontrollable. But this realization alone is not enough, because understanding the problem is only the beginning. The real shift happens when you change the way you see control itself. The shift in perspective. At some point, you begin to notice something uncomfortable. You are trying to control things that were never yours to control. You replay conversations in your head, wishing you had said something different. You expect people to act in a certain way, and when they do not, you feel frustrated. You plan outcomes as if life will follow your script, and when it does not, you feel thrown off balance. It feels logical, it feels justified, but it is the exact reason you feel unstable. Because every time you try to control what is outside of you, you give power to something that can never be fully managed. This is where the Stoics introduce a division that changes everything. A line so simple that most people overlook it, yet so powerful that once you see it clearly, your entire approach to life begins to shift. There are things that are within your control, and there are things that are not. This is not just a concept, it is a filter through which every situation can be understood. Your thoughts, your judgments, your actions, your choices, these belong to you. Other people's opinions, their behavior, the outcome of your efforts, unexpected events, these do not. Epictetus built his entire philosophy on this distinction. He taught that if you focus only on what is within your control, you will never be restrained or disturbed. But if you attach yourself to what is not, you will constantly feel frustrated, anxious, and unstable. And when you look at your own life, you begin to see how often you cross that line without realizing it. You want someone to respect you. That is not fully in your control. You want a situation to go your way. That is not fully in your control. You want certainty in an uncertain world. That will never be in your control. So every time you place your stability in these things, you create a condition that you cannot guarantee, and that is why you feel shaken, because you are building your sense of control on something that can change at any moment. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself of this constantly. In Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Book 6, paragraph 30, he reflects on how little control we truly have over external events, and how much we suffer when we forget that our power lies only in our response. This is the shift, not in the world, but in how you relate to it. Instead of asking, how do I control this situation, you begin to ask, how do I respond to this situation? Instead of expecting people to behave according to your standards, you accept that they will act according to their nature. Instead of resisting what has already happened, you focus on what you can do now that it has. This does not make you passive. It makes you precise. You stop wasting energy trying to force outcomes, and you redirect that energy toward your actions, your decisions, your mindset. And something interesting begins to happen. The more you let go of what you cannot control, the more stable you become. Not because life becomes easier, but because your foundation is no longer dependent on unstable things. You are no longer waiting for the world to align before you feel grounded. You are grounded first, and then you act. Seneca wrote about this when he emphasized that a wise person is content with what is within their control and does not depend on external circumstances for peace of mind. This is not about lowering standards or giving up ambition. It is about understanding where your power actually exists. Because once you focus on what is yours, you begin to experience a different kind of control. A control that is not fragile.
a control that does not disappear when things go wrong, a control that remains, even in uncertainty. And this is where most people misunderstand strength. They think strength is forcing outcomes, dominating situations, making things go their way. But real strength is the ability to remain steady when they do not, to act without needing guarantees, to move forward without being shaken by what you cannot change. And when you begin to live this way, something inside you becomes quieter. The need to control everything starts to fade. The urgency to react begins to slow down. The pressure to make everything perfect loses its grip, and in that space, you start to feel something that most people rarely experience: stability. Not because the world has changed, but because your relationship with it has. And from that stability, a new way of acting emerges. A way that is not driven by impulse, but by intention. A way that does not collapse under pressure, but becomes clearer within it. And that is where you begin to understand the internal code that governs those who remain unshaken. The invisible code of the unshaken. There is a way of operating that most people never learn, even after years of experience, effort, and failure. It is not loud, it does not demand attention, and it does not seek validation. But once you recognize it, you start to see why some people remain steady no matter what happens, while others collapse under pressure. They are not reacting the way you expect. While most people move immediately, they pause. While most people speak to defend themselves, they observe first. While most people interpret everything personally, they separate what is happening from what it means. This is not instinct. It is a code, an internal way of processing reality that protects them from unnecessary disturbance. The first part of this code is simple, but difficult to apply. They do not react immediately, not because they are slow, but because they understand that the first reaction is often driven by impulse, not clarity. When something happens, their instinct is not to respond. It is to see. They allow the moment to exist without rushing to define it. They resist the urge to label it as good or bad, fair or unfair, success or failure. They give themselves time to understand what is actually real before deciding how to act. This creates distance, and in that distance, they find control. Most people skip this step. They move directly from event to reaction, without questioning what they are reacting to. This is why they feel unstable. Because they are not responding to reality, they are responding to interpretation. Marcus Aurelius trained himself to do the opposite. In Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Book 8, paragraph 49, he reminds himself to strip away the story and see events as they are. Not as insults, not as injustices, but as neutral occurrences that only gain power through interpretation. This is the second part of the code. They separate facts from meaning. A fact is what happened, nothing more. Meaning is what your mind adds to it. Someone ignores you, that is a fact. Thinking it means you are not respected is interpretation. A plan fails, that is a fact. Thinking it means you are falling behind is interpretation. When you fail to separate these two, you create unnecessary suffering. But when you see them clearly, something changes. You stop reacting to assumptions, and you start responding to reality. The third part of this code is acceptance, but not in the way most people understand it. It is not passive, and it is not resignation. It is recognition. Recognition that some things are outside your control, and resisting them only creates more disturbance. Epictetus emphasized this repeatedly. He taught that when you try to control what is not yours, you will be frustrated. But when you align yourself with what is within your power, you become free. So instead of fighting reality, they align with it. If something cannot be changed, they do not waste energy resisting it. If something can be influenced, they act with focus and intention. This is why they appear calm in situations where others feel overwhelmed. They are not detached from reality, they are aligned with it. The fourth part of this code is independence from validation. Most people are constantly measuring themselves through others. They seek approval, recognition, agreement. And when they do not receive it, they feel shaken. But someone who stands firm does not rely on external validation to define their state. They act according to their principles, not according to reactions. Seneca wrote about this when he explained that the wise person is self-sufficient, not in isolation, but in judgment. Their sense of right and wrong does not depend on applause or criticism. This creates a different kind of stability. You are no longer affected by every opinion. You are no longer trying to adjust yourself to fit expectations. You are grounded in something internal, something that does not shift with every external input. And when all of these elements come together, something becomes clear. The person who remains unshaken is not someone who avoids difficulty. It is someone who processes it differently. They see before they react. They separate before they judge. They accept before they resist. They act without needing approval. And this way of operating is not something you are born with. It is something you build. At first, it feels unnatural. It requires effort to pause when you want to react. It requires awareness to question your own thoughts. It requires discipline to let go of what you cannot control. But over time, it becomes your default. And when it does, situations that once disturbed you begin to lose their power. You start to notice that things that used to trigger you no longer do. That moments which once felt overwhelming now feel manageable. That the need to react quickly begins to fade. And in its place, something stronger emerges. Clarity under pressure. And once you have that clarity, the way you move through real situations begins to change in ways that most people do not expect. The moment of rupture. This is where everything is tested. Not in theory, not in calm reflection, but in real moments where your instinct takes over before you have time to think. Someone disrespects you, and you feel that immediate urge to respond, to defend yourself, to prove that you will not be treated that way. Your body tightens, your tone shifts, and your words begin forming before you even decide what to say. Most people follow that impulse. They react quickly, and for a moment, it feels like control. But what they are actually doing is surrendering control to the situation itself. Their response is no longer chosen. It is triggered. Now watch what happens when someone trained in this internal code faces the same moment. They feel the same initial reaction, the same surge, the same tension, the same impulse. But instead of moving with it, they pause. Not for long, not in a way that looks dramatic, but enough to create distance. And in that distance, something changes. They are no longer inside the reaction. They are observing it. They notice the urge to respond, but they do not obey it immediately. They recognize that the first impulse is not a command, but a suggestion. And because they see it, they can question it. Is this response necessary? Is it useful? Is it aligned with who I choose to be? Most people never ask these questions. They move before thinking. And that is why they often regret what they say, what they do, how they act. But here, the process is different. Instead of reacting to the disrespect, they evaluate the situation. They separate the fact from the interpretation. They see what actually happened, without immediately assigning meaning to it. Maybe the person was careless. Maybe they were frustrated. Maybe it has nothing to do with you at all. This alone removes a large part of the emotional charge. And from that clarity, they choose how to respond. Sometimes they speak, but without aggression. Sometimes they say nothing, because the situation does not deserve their energy. Sometimes they address the issue directly, but without letting emotion control the outcome. This is not weakness. This is control. Now take another situation. Something goes wrong in your work. A plan fails, an opportunity disappears. Something you were counting on no longer exists. Most people immediately move into frustration or anxiety. They replay the mistake, blame themselves or others, and get stuck in a loop of what could have been done differently. Again, this feels natural, but it is not productive. Because while you are reacting to what already happened, you are not acting on what can still be done. The person who stands firm sees this differently. They acknowledge the problem, but they do not attach their identity to it. They do not turn it into a statement about their worth or their future. They see it as an event, not a definition. And because of that, they move faster toward action. What can be done now? What is still within my control? What is the next step? Marcus Aurelius reminded himself constantly to focus on the present action, not the past outcome. In Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Book 8, paragraph 32, he reflects on the importance of doing what is in front of you with clarity and discipline, without being distracted by what cannot be changed. This is why the person who remains steady appears more effective, not because they avoid problems, but because they do not waste time resisting reality. Now consider a third situation. You lose an opportunity. Something you wanted does not happen. Someone else gets the position, the recognition, the result you were hoping for. The immediate reaction is comparison, frustration, doubt. You question your progress, your value, your direction. But again, this is interpretation, not fact. The person who stands firm does not deny the disappointment. They feel it, but they do not build a narrative around it. They do not turn it into evidence that they are behind or not good enough. They return to the same principle, what is within my control now, and they act from there. This is the rupture, the moment where your old pattern tries to take over, and you either follow it or interrupt it. At first, it feels difficult. The impulse to react is strong, and the pause feels unnatural. But every time you choose to observe instead of react, you weaken the old pattern. And every time you choose your response instead of following your impulse, you strengthen a new one. Over time, this becomes automatic. The pause becomes natural. The clarity becomes immediate. The reaction loses its urgency, and situations that once felt overwhelming begin to feel manageable. Not because they changed, but because you did. This is where Stoicism becomes real, not in ideas, but in moments. Not in theory, but in action. And once you start to live this way, you begin to notice something that most people never realize. The real danger was never the situation itself. It was how quickly you lost control within it. The fatal mistake. There is a mistake that feels natural, almost justified, and because of that, most people never question it. They believe they are being honest with themselves, that they are simply acknowledging what they feel. But in reality, they are surrendering control in the most subtle way possible. They believe everything they feel. An emotion appears and instantly it becomes truth. Anger feels justified, so it must be right. Anxiety feels real, so it must be accurate. Doubt appears, so it must mean something is wrong. But this is where the problem begins, because emotions are not conclusions. They are signals. And when you treat them as final answers instead of temporary reactions, you build your behavior on something unstable. Think about how quickly an emotion can take over your perception. One moment changes your interpretation of everything. A single negative experience can make you question your progress, your abilities, even your future. But if you step back for a second, you start to see the pattern. The emotion comes first. The meaning comes after. You feel something, and then your mind creates a story to justify that feeling. It searches for reasons, connects past experiences, builds a narrative that makes the emotion feel valid. And once that narrative is formed, it becomes very difficult to challenge. This is why people remain stuck in cycles they cannot explain. They are not reacting to reality. They are reacting to a story built around an emotion that appeared without permission. Seneca warned about this in his writings when he explained that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Most of the pain you experience is not caused by what is happening, but by what your mind tells you is happening. And because that story feels real, you act on it. You say things you would not say if you were calm. You make decisions you would not make if you had clarity. You interpret situations in a way that reinforces the emotion you are already feeling. This is how control is lost. Not in the event, but in the acceptance of the first interpretation without resistance. Epictetus approached this with precision. He taught that when something happens, the first impression is not within your control. It appears instantly. But what you do with that impression, whether you accept it or question it, that is where your power exists. Most people skip that step. They accept the first impression as truth and move directly into reaction. And because of that, they live in a constant state of instability. One moment they feel confident, the next they feel uncertain. One situation strengthens them, another weakens them. Not because their reality changed, but because their interpretation did. Marcus Aurelius disciplined himself to resist this tendency. In Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Book 5, paragraph 19, he reminds himself not to be carried away by the first impression, but to pause and examine it before allowing it to influence his actions. This is the difference between being controlled and being in control. The person who stands firm does not eliminate emotions. They experience them fully, but they do not obey them blindly. They create a gap. In that gap, they observe what they are feeling without immediately turning it into a decision. They question the narrative that begins to form. They ask themselves whether this interpretation is accurate, whether it is useful, whether it deserves to guide their next action. This does not suppress emotion, it refines it. It prevents temporary states from becoming permanent directions. And this is where most people fail, even when they are trying to improve. They focus on controlling their behavior, but they never question the source of it. They try to act differently, but they are still thinking the same way. They try to stay calm, but they are still believing every emotional impulse that appears. So the cycle continues, because as long as you believe every feeling, you will always be vulnerable to them. But once you understand that emotions are not commands, something changes. You begin to see them as information, not instructions. You feel anger, but you do not assume you must act on it. You feel fear, but you do not assume it defines reality. You feel doubt, but you do not assume it reflects your true capability. You observe, you question, and then you decide. This is where control is reclaimed, not by eliminating emotion, but by refusing to be governed by it. And when you start to live this way, your reactions begin to change. The urgency disappears. The need to respond immediately fades. The impulse loses its authority, and in its place, something more stable begins to form. A mind that does not move with every feeling. A mind that stands firm, even when emotions rise. But this level of control is not built in a single moment. It is trained. And the next part will show you exactly how that training happens, and why most people never commit to it long enough to see the results. The construction of an unshakable mind. At this point, you already understand something most people ignore. You see that reactions are not inevitable, that emotions are not commands, and that control begins in the space between what happens and how you respond. But understanding is not enough, because in the moment of pressure, when everything feels immediate and intense, knowledge alone will not hold you steady. If your mind has not been trained, it will return to what is familiar. It will fall back into old patterns, not because you want it to, but because that is what it has practiced the most. This is where most people stop. They understand the idea, they agree with it, but they never build the discipline required to live it. And without that discipline, nothing changes. The mind becomes stable the same way the body becomes strong. Through repetition, through resistance, through consistent exposure to discomfort without surrendering to it. You do not become unshaken by avoiding difficult situations. You become unshaken by facing them differently, again and again, until your response becomes automatic. This is training. Not in theory, but in daily moments that seem small, but are not. Every time something irritates you, there is an opportunity to observe instead of react. Every time something does not go your way, there is an opportunity to accept before resisting. Every time an emotion rises, there is an opportunity to question it instead of obeying it. Most people ignore these moments because they seem insignificant, but these moments are the training ground. Marcus Aurelius did not wait for extreme situations to practice control. He trained himself in ordinary moments, preparing his mind for what would inevitably come. In Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Book 3, paragraph 4, he reflects on the importance of maintaining discipline in thought, even in the smallest details, because those details shape how you act when it truly matters. This is what builds consistency. You begin to notice your reactions as they happen. Not after, not when it is too late, but in real time. At first, you will fail often. You will react. You will get carried away. You will realize only afterward what you could have done differently. This is part of the process, because awareness comes before control. The more you notice, the more you create that space. And the more that space appears, the more choice you have. Epictetus approached this with simplicity. He taught that you must practice distinguishing what is within your control from what is not once, but constantly, in every situation, in every reaction, in every thought. This repetition is what changes your default behavior. At first, the pause feels forced. It feels unnatural to stop yourself when the impulse is strong. But over time, something shifts. The pause becomes automatic. You begin to feel the reaction rising, but instead of being pulled by it, you recognize it. You see it forming, and that recognition weakens its control over you. This is how discipline transforms into instinct. Seneca wrote about the importance of preparing the mind in advance, training it to remain steady before chaos arrives. Because when the moment comes, you do not rise to the level of your expectations. You fall to the level of your training, and if your training is inconsistent, your response will be inconsistent. This is why it is not enough to understand Stoicism. You have to apply it repeatedly until it becomes part of how you think, not something you try to remember when things go wrong. You train your perception by questioning it. You train your reactions by delaying them. You train your mind by exposing it to discomfort without escaping. And slowly, something begins to change. Situations that once felt overwhelming begin to feel familiar. Reactions that once felt uncontrollable begin to feel manageable. The need to respond immediately begins to fade. You start to notice that you are no longer as affected by things that used to disturb you. Not because life has become easier, but because your mind has become stronger. This is the construction. It is not fast. It is not effortless. It requires attention, consistency, and a willingness to confront your own patterns without avoiding them. But the result is something most people never experience. A mind that remains steady, even under pressure. A mind that does not collapse when things go wrong. A mind that does not depend on external conditions to feel in control. And once this foundation is built, something else emerges. A quiet strength that does not need to prove itself. A presence that does not react to everything. A clarity that remains even when the situation becomes unclear. And this is where you begin to understand the final shift, because what you gain from this is not just control. It is something deeper, something most people spend their lives chasing without realizing where it actually comes from. The silent power. At a certain point, something becomes clear in a way that cannot be reversed. You stop looking for control in the outside world, and you begin to recognize a different kind of strength forming within you. It is not loud. It does not announce itself. Most people will not even notice it, but it changes everything. You walk into situations that used to affect you, and something is different. The same words are said, the same challenges appear, the same unpredictability exists, but your internal state no longer follows the same pattern. You are not pulled in every direction. There is a stillness that remains, even when things around you are unstable. This is the silent power that Stoicism builds. It is not about dominating situations or proving superiority. It is about no longer being controlled by what you cannot control. It is about moving through life without constantly reacting to it. Most people never reach this point because they are always seeking something external to stabilize them. Approval, recognition, certainty, control over outcomes. And because those things are never guaranteed, their sense of stability is always fragile. But when your foundation is internal, something shifts. You no longer need people to behave a certain way for you to feel grounded. You no longer need situations to go perfectly for you to remain focused. You no longer depend on outcomes to validate your effort. You act because it is the right action, not because it guarantees a result. Seneca described this kind of independence when he spoke about the wise person being content with their own judgment, not because they reject the world, but because they are no longer dependent on it to define their state. This is where real confidence begins, not in knowing that everything will work out, but in knowing that you will remain steady, regardless of how it unfolds. Marcus Aurelius practiced this constantly. In Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Book 7, paragraph 68, he reflects on the idea that the mind can remain unaffected by external events if it chooses to view them without disturbance. This is not a denial of reality. It is mastery over perception. Because once you control how you see things, you control how you respond to them. And once you control your response, you control the direction of your actions. This creates a chain that most people never establish. Event happens. Perception remains clear. Emotion is observed, not obeyed. Action is chosen with intention. No urgency, no loss of control, no unnecessary disturbance, just clarity. And from that clarity, something else emerges. Presence. You are no longer trapped in what happened before or what might happen next. You are fully engaged in what is in front of you because your mind is not being pulled by every reaction. This is why someone who has developed this silent power appears different. They do not overreact. They do not rush to defend themselves. They do not get lost in every problem. They move with precision, and that precision creates trust, not only in how others see them, but in how they see themselves. Because they know that no matter what happens, they will not lose control. And that knowledge removes fear. Not the fear of events, but the fear of losing themselves within those events. This is the difference between someone who appears strong and someone who actually is. One depends on conditions, the other transcends them. And when you reach this point, you begin to realize something that most people misunderstand. Strength is not about resisting everything. It is about not being disturbed by anything that does not deserve your disturbance. And once you live this way, the world does not feel lighter. You become stronger. And in the end, that is what allows you to stand firm in any situation. At this point, you can see it clearly. Not as an idea, not as something distant, but as something that has been present in every moment of your life without you noticing. Every situation that tested you was never just about the situation. It was about how you met it. You were never lacking strength. You were lacking awareness of where your strength actually exists. You were trying to control outcomes instead of mastering your response. You were reacting to interpretations instead of seeing reality as it is. And because of that, you felt unstable in a world that was never meant to be stable. But now the pattern is visible. You see how quickly reactions take over when they are not questioned. You see how emotions create narratives that feel real, even when they are not. You see how much energy is lost trying to control what was never yours to control. And more importantly, you see where your power begins. Not outside. Inside the moment where you choose. That moment is always there. It does not depend on the situation. It does not depend on the people around you. It does not depend on how things unfold. It exists between what happens and what you do next.
Marcus Aurelius understood this when he wrote in Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Book 8, paragraph 36, that you have power over your mind, not outside events, and that realizing this is where strength is found. This is not a concept to remember occasionally. It is a way of living. Because every single day, you will face moments that challenge you, small ones that seem insignificant, and larger ones that demand more from you. And in all of them, the same principle applies. You can react or you can respond. You can follow the impulse or you can question it. You can be carried by the situation or you can stand within it. Most people will continue reacting. They will continue being shaped by what happens around them. They will continue searching for control in places where it does not exist. But you do not have to. Because now you know that standing firm is not about forcing the world to change. It is about refusing to lose yourself when it does not. This is where stability is built. This is where clarity remains. This is where strength becomes real. And once you start living this way, something shifts permanently. You stop waiting for the right conditions. You stop depending on external validation. You stop being shaken by every unexpected turn. You begin to move differently, with intention instead of impulse, with clarity instead of confusion, with control instead of reaction. And in doing so, you realize something that most people never fully understand. You do not become strong when life becomes easier. You become strong when you no longer need it to.